Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Behind the Group podcast. I am DJ Keo.
And I am Basil Barrington, and we are back with Loki Season 2, Episode number 3, 1893, 8.5 IMDb. It was an 8.3 last night. It's an 8.5.
It's
IMDb is
gone
giving
up.
us, an 8.5. Not even 1,000 reviews. What do you think about this episode?
I liked it, but like it's clearly setting up stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's setting up
Mhm.
something in the future. But so it's enjoyable. Like it's nice. Like it's not boring because there's a lot of hints and subtle stuff about what's going on in the TVA in the future and the past. So I like that aspect of it.
Mhm.
But it was a setup show. Like it wasn't nothing exciting. Like game changer happened yet. At least that we know of. But we're gonna come back to this show after the next 2-3 shows and be like, oh, okay, this is what set up this, and we
Yeah.
missed this part or whatever. But like,
Mhm.
it's a setup show.
It is. It is. I kind of get this episode. I also love the set design. It was. I call
It
it
was
a
awesome.
period. I call it a period episode because it's almost like, if you watch period dramas,
Yeah.
it's all clothing, costumes, everything else. And I was like, man, this is did it look like? I mean, this wasn't a set that was built. You think so, or was it CGI?
I think there's a lot of CGI. Like they don't
Mhm.
Disney doesn't spend money. They use the volume for everything. So
Mhm.
I think there's a high probability that was CGI and they just add the stuff in later.
Man, it
But
looked
it
great.
looked good.
Yeah, it looked
I
really
like how
good.
they do the show, like the aesthetic and the style of the show is crazy to me. It's one of
Mhm.
my favorite things about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was saying before that Sylvie is she's not quantized yet, but
Mhm.
I'm really liking Sylvie. And we now know that Jonathan Majors, like you called it, is
Yeah.
back. And I have to say
He's
this
good.
about Jonathan Majors, like what he did in this episode, man, he's really good, isn't he?
Yeah, he's acting his butt off. And I
Yeah.
was on Twitter last night and I was
Mhm.
just reading all the comments and people were like, yo, Jonathan Majors is back. I was like, yes, maybe he should be good.
Right.
Hopefully.
I think they had all
But
this stuff already in the bag. It was already
yeah, they
recorded. They were
filmed this. This
editing,
was supposed to come out last year.
Yeah.
This was supposed to come out last year and they pushed it back until this year. So
Mhm.
yeah. I liked it. I like him. I think he's a good actor. And so like I like shows like this where the actors can do their thing. Yeah, but it's
Mhm.
like that where you get to do your period piece, you have to have fun with the acting and do
Mhm.
different voices and just do stuff.
Yeah.
And Miss Minutes is kind of a psycho, man. What the hell?
Dude. I mean, so what I got from this episode was, I mean, it's a setup episode, but
Mhm.
do you think that his name was Victor Timely is basically he who remains, right?
Yeah, he's a
Hmm.
variation of him.
Right.
Like
Hmm.
yeah, Renslayer is like, that's a variation. Like, F this guy. We don't need
Yeah.
him.
Hmm.
But yeah. So like, yeah, it is him
Hmm.
from the past. Like I'm kind of curious what his official birth date is. Is it the past? Is it always 18 or whatever?
Hmm.
Is
Yeah.
that his starting point in time, or is he like in the future or whatever? Like I don't know. It's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. One thing that happened there in the show, he's talking about he has these creations, but the technology isn't there yet for him to finish them,
Right.
which I thought was very fascinating because you can think about like where you are in time, and we don't have flying cars, but like what could people be doing if they had flying cars already? You know
Hmm.
what I'm saying? Like that little thing that you need to get to where you are, like if it's not there yet, can you innovate out of that, or is that push the innovation for you that you don't have the stuff you need yet?
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I like the science aspect of it. I think it's all interesting and kind of cool. So
He's
yeah,
kind of back then in 1883, 93. He's kind of a scammer, isn't he? He's selling his
yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
he's a huckster almost. He's just like, "Hey, this
He's
works,
okay.
it doesn't." And it's just like I think all of that comes together to make him who he is
Mhm.
or who he will be, he who remains. I can't quite get that out my mouth all the time. But
Just say Kang.
yeah.
He's Kang, all right.
Kane, yeah. So I'm just like, okay, so he's got the hair. He's like kind of
Mhm.
almost bumbling, but sort of brilliant in a way.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
it's
think
kind of
that
interesting.
scientists and stuff like that back then wouldn't be like that. Like that's how they would be.
Hmm.
Like because they're to be a scientist in that day and age, you're an outcast because people can't look at numbers like you.
Right.
So like you would be kind of weird. Old school nerds. That's what you would be.
Hmm.
You just can't help it, especially because there's so few of them back in that time.
Right.
Like people were creatives, inventors.
Right.
So
So,
yeah.
the other thing that's interesting is I think that it felt like that he
Hmm.
actually knew that something was going to happen to the TVA and he had to go in and sort of rescue it. So he basically, him and Miss Minutes put a plot together. Listen, you're going to give
Hmm.
the TVA guideline to myself in
Hmm.
1893, and then, Loki, Renslayer, Mobius, they all going to come together and bring me back to the TVA to save it. Did you feel that?
Yeah. Well, because that's the cool part about it is he can tell what happened in the past and the future.
Hmm.
So I'm assuming that happened to him, and then he's like a loop now because
Hmm.
he got the book that he's not supposed to know about that he invented that pushes him forward in the future. So like
Right.
it's like a loop. You
Hmm.
can't. It's like a circular loop. You can't get out of it. But
Hmm.
it's very interesting that he prepared himself for it by getting that book, which I'm kind of curious what's in the book. Because what is it? Just a guideline for what the TVA is? Like it just explains time travel.
First of all, Obi, his picture
Hmm.
was in the book, right? He
Yeah, he
created
wrote
the
the book.
guideline, right? So
Hmm.
he's reading the book and he's like, wait a minute, this is the writer. This is the guy who created this book. I need to meet him. And then, when Loki and Mobius and
Hmm.
everyone else is like, well, he's in a TVA. Let's go through this time door and check it out, right? So
Hmm.
it's also interesting that the Renslayer is back, Google's back. Um,
Hmm.
and I had no idea she was like, maybe 5'2", 5'3". She's like,
She's tiny, man. She
she's
is
super
tiny.
tiny, dude. I'm just like, wow, I didn't know she was that. So, what's going
Yeah,
on?
she's a midget.
Yeah. Miss Minute is, you think
She's a
that,
psycho, man.
do you, so is Miss Minute, is it possible that Miss
Mhm.
Minute is controlling the whole joint, almost like, Demoiselle and like Foundation?
I mean, that's possible because
Hmm.
like he invented her
Hmm.
or it. He invented it
Hmm.
to do stuff for him, do tasks for him,
Yeah.
and he kind of set it up to be autonomous, so it runs on its own. So I mean, that's possible.
Hmm.
She as powerful as she is, and the information she has, she can kind of controls people if he gives them the right, tell them the right things to set them in motion.
Right.
You could do a lot of stuff with that. You could do a lot of damage with that.
Yeah.
So I
She's
mean, that's possible for
she
sure.
she's also pissed off that she doesn't have a body. She's not a human,
Yeah, like yo,
you
he's just
know,
a psycho robot.
because she was like, "Hey, if I had a body, I could be your girlfriend." She said, "I can be, we could be lovers, and it's just like, oh, okay. She put her face on a mannequin. I was like, oh my goodness, this is
I
crazy.
would not do that.
Yeah,
I
just
would
like,
not do
what is
that.
going on here? So Sylvie just does not like the Renslayer. What's going on with those two?
They got history. I think she was tracking Sylvie down for how many decades or how centuries. I don't know how
Centuries, yeah,
long they were with each
exactly.
other. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's been
Hmm.
checking her for a long time. Like she's number one nemesis.
Hmm.
I think that's clear as day. They hate each other, and they probably had gone through battles and stuff like that back in the
Hmm.
day. So yeah, I think that's clear. That's a clear beef right there.
Yeah.
And Sylvie hates he who remains Kang. So I mean, because of what he's gonna do in the future, all that makes sense. I mean, it's pretty. Because the thing is though, like the storyline's fairly straightforward, but I think it's done well. That it's interesting and you kind of care. You want to see what's gonna happen,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
that's the testament to a good
Excuse
show
me.
is that you care and you want to see what's gonna happen next. Because
Hmm.
there's a lot of shows I watch, I don't care what happens. So just get it over with so I can
Yeah.
review it.
Uh, three episodes in. What do you think about the writing?
Writing's good. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it's interesting, and you want to see more. Like if this was on Netflix, and they had all 6 episodes out, I would have binged it already. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, I got stuff to do. I got to do whatever. I would have watched it through already, and that's a testament to a good show.
Hmm.
That's you got something there when After every episode's out, it was like, "Where's the next one?" You were hurry waiting for the next one.
I'm waiting for
You
the
gotta wait a
next
whole
one.
week for the next one.
The reason why I ask you is because we've watched a lot of Disney shows. Again,
Hmm.
Boba
Hot
Fett, your favorite,
trash,
hot trash, right?
piles of trash,
Ahsoka, the whole
piles of
nine.
trash.
And we kind of agree that Andor and Loki, that writing is
Hmm.
really good. I mean, how can Disney like just miss the mark on so many shows, but just get like these two shows really right? I mean, again, we're talking about shows we watch, right? And I
Yeah,
mean, they kind of totally missed the mark on Ahsoka. They missed the mark on Kenobi. That could have been dope. Um, Boba Fett, Mandalorian
yeah.
was cool, but was Mandalorian cool because we were in a lockdown? Come on, really?
I think that's a factor. Honest,
Yeah,
to be honest, I think that was a factor.
yeah,
And I think the first season was really, really good because nobody knew what was going on
hmm
with Grogu and all this other stuff. So it was like, oh, okay, where's this going? And they started telling us where it's going. We're like, I don't really like this anymore. So I think that with Disney itself, it's about the showrunners and the
mm,
lack of a plan, if you will. Because
yeah,
it seems like a lot of these shows, they're just doing stuff to do it rather than the guy like, oh, this is the focus. This is where we're going to get to. We have 18 episode plan for the next 3 seasons, like whatever. It doesn't seem like they have that at all. It just
yeah.
seems like they're winging it and just throwing stuff against the wall to fill time. And Disney needs to get away from, we need a bunch of shows so that people keep the subscriber count up and just get down to making quality shows.
That's such a cop
Because
out.
HBO's doing that.
Yeah,
HBO Peacock or was it Universal? What's
Paramount Plus
the
is doing it.
Paramount?
Apple
Paramount.
TV is doing it. Come on.
Apple TV's doing it. They're making good shows.
Yeah,
There's a lot of good shows on all of these platforms that I want to see the end of.
yeah,
Whereas Disney's just throwing out content, which is trash. That's
yeah.
why people like Loki, because Loki seems like a show where they got a plan. They're doing
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, when I go onto the Disney Plus app, I mean, the first
Mhm.
thing they show us, I mean, is like just a bunch of kiddie animated stuff. I'm like, I get it, it's Disney, right?
Mhm.
We know Disney from when we were younger. It's just like ABC, all this
Yeah,
stuff, right? But it's just like
yeah.
I don't get this. Sometimes I don't get Disney Plus, like you said. It's just like sometimes they're just putting stuff out just because they think they have to, and it's not really good.
Mhm.
And the stuff that's really good, they don't do
Yeah,
a great job at marketing that. They didn't do a great
yeah.
job at marketing Andor. They're not doing a great job at
They did awful
marketing
well,
Loki. You
Disney's
know?
dead though, so, I mean, what, there's a, Star Wars. Star Wars
Yeah.
is dead.
Mhm.
Let's be real.
Yeah.
Nobody's
Mhm.
excited about watching Star Wars. If Andor came out, like, 10 years ago, they would be one of the biggest shows on TV. People be talking about it in a water cooler.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because they ran Star Wars into the ground, it's kind of like a, meh, look, it's alright. It
Yeah.
it kind of feels like Star Wars.
Mhm.
But had it come out a bunch of years ago before the brand was ruined, these terrible movies, I think that people would have a different feeling for it. And it's the same thing with Marvel. Like Marvel's brand is ruined. Nobody's excited about these movies coming up. And the hallmark for what Marvel used to be was all these things are interconnected, and you need to watch this show because it's gonna be about this movie, and you're gonna do this thing. At this point now, I could care less. And I've seen every Marvel movie. I've seen all of them, and I would say good 95% of them in the theater multiple times. And
Mhm.
I could care less about watching the next movie, was either Marvels, whatever it is. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna watch it. I could care less.
you
And
know,
it's a failure on their part.
yeah,
These things aren't they're not connected anymore. It doesn't feel like it.
I've never been into like the MCU, Marvel, anything like that. I watched
Mhm,
some stuff, but it all just seemed like it was the same thing, but just a different character. Now, let me ask you this
mhm,
because I'm not an MCU person. The
mhm.
TVA, is that something that runs throughout the MCU? Like, you can see it in
Nah,
with no. Okay, so this the T
no,
the
it's not there
TV
at all.
the TVA is completely new, right?
Yeah, well, no, it's in the Marvel comic books,
hmm
but like it's not as far as the movies that came out, the 36 movies or whatever it is,
hmm
it's not part of that. You don't
Okay.
even know it exists.
Okay, so they are so because of that, it seems like, right? And I didn't read the comic
Mhm.
books, but it seems like they're doing a really good job introducing this new thing as a live action, the TVA. I mean, would you give them
Yeah.
credit for doing
I
that?
yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, like, if you take Loki out from all the other Marvel shows,
Hmm.
these shows don't look like they go together. They don't feel like it. They might have a character that goes in one show to
But
another
they
show,
own
but, like, in
everything. How can
general
they? But
I
they
know
own
that.
it.
But see, the thing is, though, if you when you watch the original movies, right,
Hmm.
the Iron Man, Captain America, all of these things felt like they're in one universe.
Yeah.
Whereas the Marvel shows today, the all the stuff we've seen doesn't feel like it's in the same universe. They don't even overlap with each other. It doesn't feel right. They're not connected. Like
Mm,
Loki was on Asgard, like he's part of Thor's stuff, and he's on Earth. He's doing things with all the with Captain America and Iron Man. Like you can see him,
yeah.
and he feels part of this universe.
Hmm.
All this new stuff does not feel connected. And that's why I think people have this is apathy the right word? Like it's just a boring. Like I don't. People just don't care. Like this though, it feels like meh. The perfect word for it is meh.
Yeah.
People do not feel connected to it. They're not interested in it. And Loki's the one. Because okay, you have the Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then you have the other stuff. Like they're part of the all the Marvel universe too, but Loki feels more compelling and interesting because
Yeah.
it's not cookie cutter
Hmm.
and it's not the straightforward thing that we've been getting recently from Disney.
Yeah.
Because Disney has dropped the ball on
Oh,
writing and
I
directing and stuff.
mean,
It's trash
they're trying
on
to
everything they're doing.
sell pieces of who they are. The other thing about Loki is it's episodic. They give
Mm-hmm.
you these short seasons. The writing is really good. Season one was dope. Thus far, season two is really great. 3 episodes in,
Mm-hmm.
the writing is great. It's shot
Mm-hmm.
well. CGI is excellent. It seems like, I mean, I know they use this sort of technology to create this awesome CGI, but it seems like the CGI in Loki is just better than the other CGI in the other shows, even though they're
Well,
using the same technology.
here's the thing though. It's all the same companies,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
But the thing that makes the CGI good is that the director's good and they set up a good good system for what they're trying to do.
So
You know what
the
I'm saying? Like
direct.
if the director's trash and he gives you here's a garbage can, I need
Mhm.
you to turn that into a robot for me. You're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? What am I supposed to do with this?
Right.
But like
Right.
that's
Right.
that's what these directors are giving these guys from Disney. This is they're giving the tech houses and the CGI out. Like that's all they're giving them is I got a box here. Turn that into a monster. Go. You got
Right.
2 weeks. Like that's what they're giving them.
That's
If
a
you
good
set
point.
this thing up and you're like, okay, I want a little mist here, fix the mirror here in the background, but this is
Mhm.
the overall vision of what I'm doing, and it's gonna lead to this thing. They can do a better job with the CGI. Like
Mhm.
everybody has this, it's the same companies. Everyone's using the same companies.
Right.
But why is it Zack Snyder's CGI looks better than someone else's? Like it's the same companies. They're all
Mhm.
using the same people. And like
Be-
Lord of the Rings looks better 25 years ago versus what's going on today. That don't make any sense.
yeah.
That
Mhm.
literally makes no sense.
Right.
But here we
Mhm.
are.
It's
It's
almost
the
like
director is a factor.
that's so true. It's almost like they did Mandalorian, and then they had
Mm,
these, let's call them templates, right?
mm.
And then when Boba Fett came along, they were like, "Oh, let's use that template," right? And
Yes,
then
yes, that's a fact.
right, and then when you look at Andor and Loki, it's almost like they created new templates. They were like, "No, no, no, we're going to create our own world," right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Loki, and again, I'm not into MCU. I haven't watched a lot of stuff, but Loki just looks new. The world looks new.
yeah.
Everything about it looks new. The writing feels new. It's
Hmm.
There's some cohesion with the show that I don't feel and
Yeah.
see in these other shows.
Because there is no cohesion over there. That's a factor.
This is
You
yeah.
got you got bum directors and the guys that just pull out of the wall like, "Hey, come here, make an MC movie.
Right.
Like, let's go."
Mhm.
Like, hey, that's what it is. Like, it just there's you can do amazing stuff if you have a plan, and a lot of these guys don't have a plan. They're just like, "What does the office tell me?" These guys say make a show about this. All right, let's go. You know, a perfect example of this is Daredevil. Daredevil was on Netflix, and the directors and the writers they've been in the game for a bunch of years,
Mhm.
and they put together a solid show without question. One of the best science fiction comic book shows that's
Mhm.
ever been on TV, bar none.
Wow.
The action was insane. The fighting is insane. Have you watched it? Have you seen it yet?
A little bit, not all of it.
Okay.
Mhm.
There's an episode in Daredevil season 1 when he's in a hallway, and when I say this was fire, this was fire,
Mhm.
and that goes to good directing, good CGI, good acting. Everybody was on their A game for this show because it wasn't part of this other thing, so they had to make it good
Yeah.
because it wasn't part of Marvel at the time. They just had the rights to like 3-4 characters and like, all right, go for it. So they
Wow.
they made an amazing show, and I think it's limitations because you have the at this point with Marvel you have everything at your disposal. You can do whatever you want. You have all the characters. You can basically do whatever you want, and
Yeah.
it's too much. They need help.
Yeah.
They need guidance. That's what it is.
Yeah. Okay, so season 2, Loki, episode number 3, 1893. What are you going to rate this episode?
I give it an 8. It's a good setup for the future. Like it's very interesting. It really depends on what they do in the next 3 shows, but I'm invested. I want to see where this goes. That's how I feel about it. What
Yeah.
about you?
When I first started watching it, I was like, "Ooh, they're in Chicago, 1868." I was like, "Oh, this is a period episode."
Hmm.
Saw Renslayer, that pulled me in a little bit. I still
Hmm.
wasn't sure about the episode, but then after the first 10 minutes,
Yeah.
it slowly pulled me in. So I'm going to give it an
Hmm.
8.5. This was a really good episode. It looked beautiful. Forget about it. It was awesome. I mean, the
Yeah.
look, I
It's got
mean,
the feel.
it
It's
just
it's got a
looks
good feel.
really awesome. Like I said, Loki, the writing is dope. They're doing a great job with this show, man. Keo's giving
Hmm.
this an 8. I'm giving this an 8.5. Loki, go check it out. It's on Disney Plus. Forget all the other MCU stuff. Well,
Yes.
there you have it. Thanks
Basically,
for checking out another episode of the Behind the Groove podcast. I am Basil Barrington.
I am DJ Keo.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And until next time, peace.
All right.